Process, geometry, channel match. Now, I want to move the blue down and to the right. So I'm going to go down and to the right. And now apply it to the preview. That's better. It's subtle. Shift Control Z, you'll see it shifting. Actually, let me make it really huge so you can really see the effect.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Before, after, before, after. That's channel match, yes?
Intuitively, how do you know that it's down and to the left and not up?
Well, I was looking at it. It was bluer at the top left, so I want to move the blue channel down to the right to align it with the other two. I'll show you again. Let me reset it. Actually, you know what? Let me make it artificially bad. Right? Sometimes you might see something that looks like this. Oh, it's really hard. This is a good shot. Damn it. Okay, do you see that little bit of color alignment now? Misalignment? It's kind of pinky. See these? You use channel match to bring those back into alignment. And if it's blue, it's bluer in the bottom right, I'm going to use my controls to move the blue to the upper left. That's how.
Is that offset a processing issue, or is that something that happened when you took the image and
It's probably during alignment, registration. And the solution to that is to, I'll show you. Okay, I'm not going to use this, so you can close channel match. The solution to that during registration is in image registration. Select distortion correction, and that will fix that. Distortion correction is really good if sometimes you're combining data from different telescopes, and they might have different amount of curvature or aberrations at the corners in particular. This will tighten all that up. The other thing you can do, if that doesn't help, is go to 2D surface splines. Much more accurate, but it takes a lot longer. Okay, so let's get rid of that. So
you could have split those channels and just realign them again.
Yeah, you could split your RGB channels and run image registration on them to realign them. But now you're starting to mess with the data and you'll lose a little bit of sharpness. I bet you couldn't see it. Okay, so I think I said the only other thing I want to do here is to sharpen up the stars, or increase the saturation of the stars. So I need a star mask. So go process, mask generation, star mask, and hit go. So pretty. Scale to say 7 or 8 and do it again. Now it's there. It's right there. Loaded all my other stars too. So let me show you my solution to this. Go back to default settings. So click on the bottom right there. And make your star mask. And we're going to use pixel math. Remember our local deringing support image, the LDSI file that we made early on? It's only got bright stars in it. This one doesn't have bright stars in it. See where I'm going? We're going to use pixel math and combine them. So, Open up Pixel Math, which is down here. And what we want to do is add LDSI plus star mask and apply it to the image. Did you see what just happened? My bright stars are now in my star mask. Only problem is they're going to have some fairly sharp edges, the bright stars that I just added. So what I want to do is to soften that mask a little bit with convolution at default settings. So now I've got all the stars in there, they have nice soft edges, and I'm ready to apply this star mask onto my image and see what it looks like. So what you can see is the nebula is protected, the background is protected, the stars are revealed. Now there's a number of things we can do. Some people would want to make the stars smaller. If you want to do that, use morphological transformation. Try it with default settings. If that doesn't work, reduce the intensity slider. Okay? But that's not what I want to do right now. I want to deal with saturation. So let's close all this junk that's getting in my way. You notice there is a color saturation tool. I would advise you do not use it very often. It's good for selectively enhancing the saturation of one color, but it's not good for increasing the saturation of just the least saturated areas while not affecting the most saturated areas. So areas that are already saturated, I want to leave them alone. Areas that don't have much color, I want to boost. Let's go into Preview 2 again. Turn off the visibility of the mask. Turn off color saturation. And open our Curves command. So I talked yesterday about the PIXINSIGHT curves versus Photoshop curves. Photoshop curves is very good for brightness and contrast changes. But PIXINSIGHT curves gives you brightness and contrast, each individual channel. The luminance can be affected. The A and B components of an LAB image can be affected. You can change the hue or the saturation, all in the same command. We're just going to use saturation and activate the real-time preview so we can see what we're doing here. Maybe even fill the screen with it. And, okay, that's awful. See the magenta halos and so on? Okay, so let's start. We only want to affect the most saturated, the least saturated regions, which are down here. And let's take this point and bring it back down. Add another point. Bring that back down. I'm sneaking up on it. Bring that back down. Still too much. Take that.
Well, do you find 3 points is sufficient to?
No, sometimes I use 1, sometimes I use 10.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to test it and see.
See what works.
This is looking okay, but you notice that it's introducing artifacts around this star here. Look, this is with and without. Okay, so I got to close that preview and go back to my star mask. My star mask, the stars are too bloated. So here's what we're going to do with the star mask. Reset the curve, go to RGBK, and let's reduce the middle brightness of the star mask. Okay, that's a better mask. It's already applied here, so reset this, and let's try again. That's better, but I'm still oversaturating certain areas. I think that's good now. So that's with, without. Oh, sorry, with, without. With, without. It's subtle. So now, let's do a preview on the whole image. With, without. I think that's a nice amount of change. The blue stars look really nice. That's without. With. I think the color of those stars now looks, I would be happy with those. Okay. I'm going to hit go and make the magic happen. All right. Now, there's a number of other things that we could do at this stage. One of them is to shrink the stars down a little. I think let's try doing that because we have a few more minutes. My star mask is on. I'm going to go back to preview 2. And I'm going to open up process, morphology, halfway down, morphological transformation. I personally like the morphological selection filter. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to change this to 3 elements. And I'm going to reduce the amount to about 50%. And I'm going to reduce, so if you go all the way to the left here, it's all shrinking. If you go all the way to the right here, it's all dilation. If you go left midway, it's going to shrink a fair bit and then dilate a little bit, restoring your nice shapes of the nice edges to your stars.
Why 3 by 3 rather than 1?
Because I tried it and it worked. But let's try it both ways, okay? So applying it to my preview, subtle shrink, very subtle shrink. I like it. But let's do what you said and let's increase this to say 11, and you need to make it a round point spread function. And apply it and see what happens. Actually, I like that better. Okay? See, look. Look at this. Where the heck is it? Look at this star here. That's before and after. All right? And I like the 11. Actually, I think it's a little too much for my taste.
Might be a little bit too much.
Right, so let's shrink this down to, say, 7 and use a round function again.
Could you change your amounts up there as well?
Yeah, sure you could. Sure you could. But I find it better to, you always want to blend. So I kind of set the blending parameter first, and then, again, it's all about sneaking up on the solution. Okay, if we've got something that we like now, going to go back to the main image and apply it. And watch how the stars shrink a little bit. Okay, so that's after, before. After, before.
One other question.
Yeah.
Way back, what did we do in all the steps we've gone through to keep the H-alpha from having overrun those star colors?
Well, the first thing that we did is we used the NB-RGB combination script.
That did it?
It protects the stars.
Okay.
That's the main thing.
Okay.
The second thing that we did is when we made the synthetic luminance, we know our H-alpha is probably not going to have as good a signal, right? So it's going to get down-weighted in making the average. That also helps prevent the salmon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Star colors, what always goes away
Yeah.
the first thing. With the
Yeah.
H-alpha.
Now, one other thing you might want to think about, we didn't do any sharpening yet. This would probably benefit from some sharpening. So what we need is our synthetic luminance file to use as a mask. So let's apply that and check it. Yeah, high signal areas are revealed and stars. Open up MLT Sharp. Okay? So remember I said MLT can be used for noise reduction or sharpening? We used it for noise reduction at the linear stage, but in the nonlinear stage, we can use it for sharpening. I tend to want to sharpen layers 2, 3, and 4, and I would start with layer 2, with point 1 and point 1, and apply it with the preview. It's too much, you see? It is doing a nice job, but it's too much. So let's dial these back a little bit. I'm going to change that to 0.05 and 0.05. And that's pretty nice now. It's a subtle effect. If people can look at your image and say, oh, that's sharpened, you did too much. Okay? So even there, that's a little too much for me. So let me show you how we're going to deal with this. Before we apply it, let's drag this image over to the desktop to make a copy of it, an RGB clone. And we're going to rename that unsharp or not sharp. Then we're going to apply the sharpening tool to our image. So now we have a sharp version and a not sharp version. Okay? Take the mask off. So there's no mask on either of these images. There's sharp and not sharp. Open Pixel Math. And we're going to go NB RGB plus not sharp. Okay? And you can put coefficients in front of these. So if you don't do anything, it's just what you see. But you could say 0.7 times sharp plus 0.3 times not sharp. All right? Now we need to open up the destination and make sure that we rescale the result. Otherwise, you're going to get values outside of the range. And when you apply this, they're blended. We've got a little bit of sharpening, but not too much. And now, if you ever want to see what you did to this darn image, go to your History Explorer and select it, and you can see everything we did. You can, by clicking on the name of a process, you will open it up with the settings that were used. And by clicking on clicking on the number of the process, you'll take the image back to where that step was. Now, if I apply a new step right now, I lose everything that came after it. So at this point, you're better off to copy it to a new image and keep going.
One more question.
Hang on, I want to get back to where I was. So there we are. Yes?
When you did the sharpening on this last step, why didn't you just keep the stars out of the process?
Because I wanted to sharpen them a bit.
Really? Sharpen stars kind of look at times, right?
But that's why I blended it back with Pixel Math.
Yeah, all right.
But you know what? Many ways to skin a cat or cook a brownie or whatever. Find your own way.
Who's got brownies?
I tried to demonstrate enough different ways to approach these that you can try them and see what you like. We have to wrap up in about 5 minutes or less. So I'm done with the process. I just want to show you how to save what we did. So if you go to File, Save Project, and hit OK, and yes, you want to overwrite, you'll have a record of everything we just did. Okay? Now, questions? Yes? Some people don't like to.
What's your thought? I'm just curious, what's your thought of why you?
I use it because it's easy. And chrominance really doesn't contribute much to the visual impression of noise and sharpness in the final image. There are purists who do not do that. I'm not one of them.
I just noticed that you lose some saturation in your stars when you do it,
Yeah,
but there's a couple sliders there. On the way-
yeah, the wavelet layers.
If you knock those down, it tends to reserve a lot of that small star color better.
Yeah.
And I was just, you know,
It depends for me on the image. Often I do use it because it's easier, but if I'm concerned about something like that, TGV denoise is better. Just use both the luminance and the chrominance tabs. Anything else? This was an intermediate workshop, not an advanced workshop, okay? There's way more that we could have done, but sometimes, this is really important, guys. The enemy of good is better. Sometimes. Sometimes you can take it too far and you have to know when to stop, right? So there's other things that we could have done, but at the end of the day, it may not have made much difference to the final aesthetic. And for me, that's what it's about, is the visual impression, the aesthetic. We're not doing science here. Are we good? Thank you.